Athletic Development Webinar Series 2021. Thank you for attending this webinar today. We are all very excited to have you here with us again at this webinar series brought to you by Reliance Foundation Youth Sports. RFIs aims to enable the ecosystem of sport through improvements in infrastructure, skill development of PE teachers, digital empowerment, and by creating sporting heroes. Reliance Foundation Youth Sports is a countrywide multi-sport platform for school and college athletes. The platform was established to encourage a sporting culture in schools and colleges and to enable India's next champions. The content of these presentations are purely for educational purposes and should not be substituted for medical advice. If you have any questions during the presentation, you may please type it in the Q&A box and they will be responded to at the end of the session. Please make sure to follow our social media pages for more updates on the athletics webinar series and for other RFIs related content. Today's topic, injury self-management, is being presented by Nilesh Makwana, Senior Sports Physiotherapist at Sir H.N. Reliance Foundation Hospital. Thank you, Nilesh, for joining us today. And now over to you to start off with the presentation.
Thank you, Apurva. It was good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Nilesh Makwana, Senior Sports Physiotherapist from Sir H.N. Reliance Foundation Hospital, which is in Mumbai. So today I'm going to speak basically the road to recovery after an injury, which is very important for every athlete and also for the coaches. So let's start from here. So what is injury? So injury is basically occurs either while playing sport. You may be having some difficulty like the technical faults or overtraining or undertraining, or you are not enough condition. That can be one of the cause of getting the injury. Also in exercises while lifting weights, you may be having some faulty techniques or undertraining and overtraining again at this level. So what is self-management? The self-management means you move away from the passive role of receiving care and become actively involved in making decisions about your injury. So actively involved, that is very important, because here you're going to have three major benefits. That is, first, you're going to have a quick response to injury, and the time taken between the response and injury is going to be reduced. So that is very important. The second thing is you are actively involved. You are actively involved in the thinking process of rehabilitation. And the third thing is basically you can have a self checklist of what you want to improve and how you're progressing from an injury. So that is very important. The three main criteria which is very important when you do a self-management. So what are the risk factors or the factors influencing injury? The first is a load. So the load is very important for any sport. It's not only for athletics, for any sport. In fact, it's also very important for a general population as well. So the volume and intensity, we always talk about volume and intensity, and that is very important. So the volume basically means the repetition and the sets. Volume का मतलब होता है repetition and set. ज़्यादा repetition मतलब number of repetition जैसे हो गए 12, 15, right? And the set, number of sets 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the number of sets. So the total the repetition and the set, that becomes a volume. Now, how do you measure the intensity? The measurement of intensity either via weights or all-out drills. Weights, basically how much poundage you are able to lift in the gym, and all-out drills basically how much effort you are putting for one sprint, or whether you're going 90% of the intensity or 95 or 80% or 100%. So this is very important. The other factors, that is the mechanics. So the mechanics of lifting weights, that's very important. So you can see some of the mechanics in lifting weights. So this is basically overhead squats, barbell squats. And if you see highly unstable movement while doing the overhead squats, you can see one more repetition for that. Right, so there is highly unstable, the core is not stable, the shoulder is not stable, and there is the front and back sway while lifting. Right, the simple mechanics that you can correct by core bracing. So what is core bracing? You can see that. So you take a deep breath in, push the abdomen out, so you brace the core. Right, you see it again. You brace the core. right? And the similar movement, you can see the difference. So that's the movement. Again, you can see that. So that's highly stable. So the movement, so the back is stable, the shoulder is stable, there is no front and back sway of the posture. Again, other mechanics that you can see is in running. This is very important, where the coach is actively involved in this decision making. So you can have a video shoot of your own run. You can discuss with the coach about your hip movements, how your hips are moving, how your knee drive is, how your ankle stiffness, your arm swings, and also if you take it from the side, you can also see your back. So your back, whether it is arched, it is hyperextended, and after the run you're feeling tight in the back. That is very important. So the coach is actively involved in correction for these mechanics. So always have a communication with the coach after your run. Other conditioning factors that you have is the conditioning overall. I mean, say basically the fat percentage, the lean body mass, and the weight. So you can say the difference between pre and post, how there is a difference in the fitness level as well. So your fat percentage, what is the fat percentage, your muscle mass, and your weight. So this is very important, because higher the fat mass, lower is your muscle mass. That's the normal standard, and that's not the benefit for any athlete, because again you're going to have a lot of injuries or issues in later on in your life. Here, the conditioning, basically, you check for pain, pinching, and discomfort. You can have musculoskeletal screening or detailed assessment by an expert for yourself, or you can have a partner or coaches to check any passive movements. So you can see how the movements, you can check for the hip movements, inwards and outwards, and see what's the difference, any pain, pinching, and discomfort which is present during this movement. You can also check the hamstring length, simple hamstring length, whether it is restricted, is there any pain while doing that, and also some of the hips. So you also give some overpressure if there is any, again, there is a pinching or discomfort while doing that movement. You can again check rotations for the hip, and also check some of the groin stiffness by doing this exercise. This groin stiffness is very important, because we have seen more groin stiffness having more issues in the hamstring and the lower back while lifting as well as running. So what happens after the injury? So it's a simple, you first get a pain, definitely after injury, you get swelling at the site of injury, and also overall you get a restricted movement. This is the process. This is what happens immediately after the injury, right? Before we move ahead with the management, you need to understand the difference between the soreness and the injury. Understand first the characteristic of the pain. So characteristic of the pain, basically pain ka behavior kaisa hai soreness mein or injury mein. This is very important slide. You can take a screenshot or a photo of this. So what is the characteristic of the pain in soreness? So you have a dull pain, you feel tight, you feel achy. It's a generalized pain. It's not one particular area which is like हम लोग जो बोलते हैं जैसे एक लोकेशन में पेन है वैसा नहीं है. In injury, it's basically one localized pain, and also there is a sharp pain at rest and exercising. So what is the duration? Duration in the sense कि कितने time के बाद ये soreness pain आता है, right? Or after how many hours the pain comes, or the pain is at peak, right? So that is basically 24 to 72 hours in soreness, and in injury, basically it comes immediately or within 24 hours. How much days it takes for it to get recovered completely? So for soreness, it basically takes 2 to 3 days, and injury, it may linger for a longer time if it is not addressed properly or in time. The focused area for the soreness and injury, the focused area for the soreness is muscles, and for injury, it may be muscle, joints, tendons, ligaments. Like injury can happen anywhere. Other thing, basically how it improves, the improvement. So if you want to improve your soreness, the movements, basically it's very important, movements and stretching. And in injury, the ice, rest, and certain movements. I'll tell you how you basically want to how you manage the injury later on in this presentation. So that's a characteristic of injury and how you improve. how it aggravates the soreness, how it aggravates. If you're sitting still, you're sitting at one place for a longer time. So when you start walking, you feel more pain. But when you start walking for a little, like 4-5 minutes, basically the soreness reduces. That's the characteristic of soreness. For the injury, it's basically if you continue the activity in that injury, the pain stays or pain may increase as well. So that's the characteristic of injury. So this is a very important slide for everyone to understand the difference between the soreness and the injury. Before we move ahead with the acute management or the immediate management after the injury, you need to first rule out the red flags. What are the red flags? Three simple red flags you need to rule out. First is a fracture, any fracture of the bone or something which is there. It is very important to have a scan. If you have like you just tripped over while running or something that is causing excruciating pain. So that is very important to rule out the fracture. The second one is if you have black discoloration, like as it is seen in the photo. This is a hamstring tear. This is a massive tear. Basically, you can see a lot of hematomas. So basically, blood collection at that location. And the third one is a ligament. So you can see the laxity in the ligament. You can see how the knee laxity is there. This is a complete ACL tear, basically. Okay. So this, once you rule out all three areas, then you move ahead with the management. So what are the process of management? The process of management is very simple. First, you identify, then you evaluate, and then you manage, right? So identify, evaluate, and manage. It's a three simple process, simple step that you want to do the management for your for the injury. So let's identify first. So you should have a checklist, or you can have a notepad or any or you can have a checklist where you have the injury. So the first is either it's in the ankle injuries or the knee injuries or hamstring or hip or low back. You can just mark out a circle, or you can just write it down, or you can put you can put it in your notebook or in your diary. And then you're going to evaluate it. How you're going to evaluate it? First, you're going to evaluate it to do the movement. So you're going to understand which is the first most painful movement. Okay, it's a movement. It's not a simple activity like the stair climbing. Stair climbing is a function. I'm not saying the function. It's a movement that you need to understand. So the first most painful movement that you need to evaluate. The second one you're going to evaluate is second most painful movement, and the third most painful movement. This is very important. Later in our slides, that I'll tell you how you can evaluate again, and how it's going to how this slide is important for your reevaluation, and also to see if you are on a correct path for your injury rehabilitation or management. So let's see acute management. Here the pain is going to be excruciating. Normally at this level the pain is always above 7, and you have excruciating pain at this stage. So the management at this stage is basically you limit the activity. Basically, you can protect that area. You can offload that area. Offload basically आप वो area पे आप ज़्यादा भार नहीं देते हैं, right? So that is offloading of that area. Once you offload that area, you can also give some medicine. The medicine is basically prescribed only by a professional, not by anyone. Not self-medication. The professional should be involved at this level. Simple by pain medication. Remember, there is no anti-inflammatory medication given at this stage. The reason is we require some inflammatory markers to go at this level, because inflammatory markers are important for healing process. So when you have an injury, there are a lot of inflammatory markers. This is going to be very important for a remodeling, or you can say a restructuring of that injured area. Okay. So no anti-inflammatory medicine. So this basically takes approximately 2 to 3 days. Once this is passed, right, then you can simply follow this amazing protocol called as police. So understand, whenever in trouble, call the police, not in a literal term, but definitely at this stage. So acute management, you can see, so P stands for protection. So protection is basically you are protecting that area to get further damage or further injury, right? So what is the importance of this protection? So this prevents the formation of large gaps within the muscle or ligament. So if you have any injury, or if you have any injury like this, there's an injury. If you keep on moving this injury, this injured part, you're going to have a large gap. And when there is a healing process, the process of this to fill this gap is going to be very long, or it may not happen. You may require some additional medical advice or a surgery later time later in your rehabilitation. So this is very important. The other thing is reduce the size of the connective tissue scarring. How the scarring is. When you get a cut in the forearm, you get a scar formation, right? That the scar, a similar scarring happens also in our ligament and the muscle. So if you try to, even if you have a partial tear or a partial injury, if you try to move, it develops into scar, and scar is not good for any of our muscle or ligament, because that is going to reduce the function of it. That's going to reduce the function of muscle and also the function of ligament. The optimum loading is also very important. Now, this is a simple optimum loading that which I do normally for my athletes when they have an ankle injury. So you can have simple hill walk, right? So simple hill walk. This is in the sand, basically some of the sand drills, which is very important, right? The other activity that you can do is a toe walk. This is also very important. And the third activity, you can do sand pick. So you can pick the sand with your toes and then release it. Pick the sand with your toes and release it. So these are the three activities that is very important. This prepares the ankle joint for compressive, tensile, and shear force, basically. So compressive, tensile, and shear force is very important when you're doing any running, especially when you're trying to decelerate or when you're trying to stop. So ankle requires a lot of these forces. The ankle is going to go a lot of these forces. So this is very important for those forces to understand. Ankle is very important. This drills are very important for this forces rehabilitation. You can say learning the correct movement pattern. Some optimum loading for the lower back pain, you can say simple pelvic tilt. So you can see just a simple movement in the lumbar, in the lower back. So just moving the lower back, basically. This athlete is doing it very nicely because he's not having lower back pain. But those who had lower back pain or have lower back pain, this movement is going to be even more difficult. So once you start doing this movement, it's going to go very gradually. You start with a basic movement in this. You can start with a smaller range of movement and then progress it to higher range of movement. छोटे से चालू करके बड़े तक जाना है. So never start directly. That doctor has said to put, do the pelvic tilt. So not start immediately. Go slow movement, go with a lesser range, and then progress it to higher range. Other thing that you can do is a core activation. The core activation is very important for the lower back. As you do the core activation, it helps in offloading the back. Okay, so whenever you do any you just do a normal walking or stair climbing or sitting for a long time, this exercise helps a lot in lower back pain. Other optimum loading for the hamstring. So understand the terminologies basically before we move on to these exercises. So what is proximal and what is distal? So proximal is basically whatever is towards the heart, and distal is whatever away from the heart, right? So if I take the hamstring, whatever the hamstring part which is towards the hip joint or a hip or a pelvis, that becomes the proximal, and whatever is towards the knee, that becomes a distal for the hamstring, right? So the distal sliders, these are very important. Sliders are just basically stretching and contracting. That is very important for the hamstring in the starting phase. So you can use this exercises for your hamstring injuries. You can also do some proximal sliders. This is very important as well if you have a proximal hamstring injury. Ice, it's one of the gold standard for long time. Basically, it helps in reducing the pain and inflammation. Here, the inflammation, it's put because we don't want any excessive swelling or excessive inflammation or excessive pain, because that may reduce the activity, or that will hamper our role in terms of getting the rehabilitation done. Okay. The C stands for compression. So here we use the compression. This is also very important for reducing the swelling. Now there are many new modalities that have come basically that gives compression as well as ice. So this is going to help, having both the benefits of compression and ice. And the last one is elevation. This basically reduces the swelling. So if you elevate at 30 degree from the ground level, definitely this is only applicable for some distal joints, for example, ankle and knee and hand, basically wrist and elbow, but not for hip or lower back. So elevation is only for the distal joints. So what are the process basically we follow? Simple process that you first follow your joint range of motion. You first improve your joint range of motion, then strength, then function, and then return to activity or training. Right now, let's move ahead with that. Before we go ahead with any training program or you can say a rehabilitation program or process, you need to understand this movement triangle. This movement triangle is very important. You can see the base. The base is made up of strength, stability, flexibility, balance, and joint mobility. This is very important because on this, the endurance and coordination and the speed, power, and agility is placed. Okay, this is the base of all the movement or all the sporting movement or sports. So when you do this activity, this movement triangle, you can take a screenshot or a photo of this. When you have a strong base, getting the speed, power, and agility is very easy. Okay, and it is in a simple process. So you can achieve that without getting injured. That's important. Okay, so at initial stage, we are going to just focus on strength, stability, flexibility, balance, and joint mobility, endurance, and coordination. So now let's move ahead with the subacute management. So here, now after the acute phase has passed, now the pain has reduced at this stage. So the pain is going to be between 4 to 6, somewhere between 4 to 6. So still have pain, definitely, but not excruciating what it was when you got injured. So here you're going to have a simple formula, that is volume-based isolation exercises. So what is volume? As I said, as I said earlier as well, volume is basically the number of repetition and number of sets. And what is isolation? Isolation is basically single joint movement. एक joint का जो movement होता है उसको isolation बोलते हैं और एक muscle पे focus होता है. It's only one muscle which is focused at this stage, right? So you can see a simple clamshells. So here, if you see clamshells, the shoulder, the hip, and the ankle is in straight line, and the clamshells, how the clamshells open and close, that's how the movement is, right? So you can see a simple clamshell movement. So you can ask the athlete as well where you are feeling. So he can show that this is the area that I'm feeling, basically the contraction where he's feeling. So you can see he's saying that he's feeling in the glutes. So which is good. If you don't feel at that location, basically you can change the angulation so that the mechanics is proper. Understand, the technique is proper. Technique is everything right now at this point of time. Other thing you can do is a fire hydrant. Fire hydrant is basically very important again for the glutes. This two exercises very good for the lower back, also for the hamstring injury. So again, you can ask, as is just shown, where is feeling. Again, you should feel it in the glutes. Other exercises for the isolation movement is basically glute bridge. You can simple start with the double leg glute bridge, and then progress with the single leg. These are again, this is focused mainly for the buttock muscle or a glute muscle, you can say. But this is again, you start with both the legs and then progress it to single leg. Other exercise that you can use as isolation is simple adductor hold. Just lift and just hold for initially, you can say 5 seconds, because it's one of the strong contraction for the adductor as well. Then progress it to 10 seconds and then move on to the progression. Then you can have other movement pattern as well. You can also put some weight over the hips so that it becomes a little more strong contraction. That's in progression. For the hamstring, you can use the double leg hamstring bridge. So this you can start with both the legs. This is very important exercises for the hamstring, especially if you have a hamstring injuries. So this you can start with the hamstring bridge by both the legs and then slowly progress to single leg. Once you're comfortable with this and once you're fine, there is no issues going on, there is a you are confident that that you can progress it from there, then you can start with the initial range. So the hamstring bridge initial range is also very important. This activity is very important for the hamstring because majority of the time in sprinting, the hamstring injury occurs when you're hitting the ground. So this is where where we have to focus when during the hamstring injury. But first you start with the mid range and then go into the initial range. So again, here you can start with both the legs together. In this also you can put weights so that it gives little more strong contraction and then move on to single leg. Some of the activity that I prefer my athletes to do is basically the groin opener. Majority of the time that basically we have seen that if you have a very tight groin or the hip joint is very stiff, they try to arch from the back while running, or also when you do the squats, they tend to have either lower back issue or lower back they load the lower back, or they can also have some knee issues. So if you involve these exercises or involve this activity in your warm-up routine, this is going to be amazing before the run or before the strength session. So you can see simple groin opener. So this is going to be at 3 different angulation. So one is outer angulation, the mid, and the inner angulation. So it's a simple movement like a lateral lunge, but you are basically kneel to one leg, and then you are going to move to other side, and then the inner range. You may see this again. So outer range here where the foot is outside, mid range where it goes a little more inwards, like exactly behind the hip, and then you move a little more inwards. So this is gonna help you open the groin region. The other exercise that you can do is a hip opening with the band or with the super band. This is very important for any athlete who is feeling some pinching issue or a pinching pain in front of the hip. So you can distract the hip joint, and then you move it so it becomes free and you are easy and the movement becomes easy. Again, endurance can also be done at this stage. The endurance, you can have a lot of protocols, like right now you can have a lot of protocols which is available on the internet. There are a lot of research articles that has been published on this. You can improve, you can do speed endurance, you can do endurance, you can do speed training on the bike. So that all you can involve at this stage. Now, when you go to return to participation, so that's basically the pain reduces to 1 to 3. So comparatively, now you have less pain. So now you are going to have little more advanced exercises. Advanced exercise, basically here you're going to have a lot of volume based compound movements. So what is compound movements? Compound movements, basically when you involve 2 or more joints, right? जब आप दो और दो से ज्यादा जॉइंट्स को आप इन्वॉल्व करते हैं, वो कंपाउंड मूवमेंट्स होता है. सो वॉल्यूम बेस्ड, अगेन वॉल्यूम का मतलब क्या है? मोर रेपिटेशन, मोर सेट्स. सो अगेन यू स्टार्ट विद द बेसिक स्क्वाट्स, body weight squats, having a proper movement with proper technique. Once you are fine with both the legs, then you can move ahead with the lunges. Again, focus more on the technique because this is going to be very important. An example like Bulgarian squats. So this is again a little more advanced. So you start with the squats. This is a progression. This is start with the squats, lunges, and Bulgarian squats. Once you are comfortable with this, then you can add on some weights like 5 or 10 kg dumbbells. Then you can use, you can do goblet squats with the good technique and good movement, and Bulgarian squats with weights. Great. You can add some more stability work at this stage. So you can start with a simple Romanian deadlift, single leg Romanian deadlift. You can start without the weight first, and then you can do it with the dumbbell. This is very important for stability, for the hamstring, for the glutes, and for the lower back. So I prefer involving this activity and these exercises for my athletes whenever they have any issues or back pain or hamstring or knee pain. And then you can progress it to the barbell. Same movement with the barbell. Start with the barbell of 15 or 20 kgs and then slowly add weights. You can start, then you can add 2.5, 5, and 10 to give a little more challenge in this activity. In this stage, you can also involve hip thrust. So again, this is very good for the hamstring, lower back, and glutes. So you can start without the weights, having a proper technique, and then progress it to single leg. Once you put on to this, once you move ahead with the single leg, then you can use weights on this to give more challenge to this movement or give more challenge to this exercise. Again, the other exercise, I can use the same movement with the loop band or with the simple Thera loop. Again, you start with both the legs and then you progress with the single leg. Once you are comfortable with all these movements, then you need to basically give more challenge to the stability and strength, and also some more challenges to overall body, right? Because you are gonna ultimately you'll need ultimate body's performance, full body's performance for your sprinting or your athletic performance, right? So you start with the simple overhead squats without weights, just to get the movement right. Just to get the movement right. This is without weights, and this is very important where your stick should be when you go down, when you descend down, it should be in straight line, not moving ahead and front and back. So you can see it again. And then to give a little more challenge, you can do it with the barbell squats, overhead barbell squats. Again, remember we started with the adductor hold, adductor lift hold. Now you're going to have adductor lift, which is a simple movement. Again, this is a progression of adductor hold, and then you're going to have a little more dynamic adductor lift. So this is going to be again very important. This is a progression for the adductor. Now this slide is very important. Basically, you need to reevaluate what have you done previously. Basically, you have reached at a stage where you need to reevaluate your status, your injury status. So red light, you need to understand red signal. So red signal, basically you need to stop. Red light is you need to stop. Yellow light, basically you have to move with the precaution, and green light is basically, okay, fine, you're fine, you can go ahead, right? So red light is the pain during and after or next morning, right? So when you do the movement, you're doing the activity, you're doing the exercises, and you get the pain at that time, or you're also getting pain after the movement, or you're getting in the next morning, definitely you need to stop. The primary movement. Now here, the most important part, remember when we evaluated the movement, you actually evaluated the first most painful moment, second most painful moment, and the third most painful moment. So now that is going to be helpful here when you evaluate again. So the primary movement pain at 50% of the capacity. So what is 50% of the capacity? If you are, for example, if you are able to do 10 kgs for your right hamstring, and your left hamstring, you're doing only 5 and you're still getting pain. So that is a 50% of the capacity for the hamstring. And that is painful, right? That is painful. So that's a red light, basically. You're still not completely recovered at that level. The other thing is that you need to check is pain on muscle contraction or weak contraction in primary movement. Remember, again, the primary movement is very important. Pain on movement with overstretch. If you do overstretch of that movement, definitely there is a pain. Stop. Pain on basic functional activity. Basic functional activity basically means walking, stair climbing, and other activity that you use in your daily routine. That activity is also painful. Definitely, that's a red light that you need to stop. So what is yellow light? Slight pain after, but not next morning. So you got the pain afterwards, but the next morning you're completely fine. So that's a yellow light. Basically, you need to move ahead with the precaution. Primary movement pain at 60 to 70%. Again, the right hamstring is 10, left hamstring, I'm getting pain at 70% or at 7 kg. So that is a primary movement pain. Secondary or tertiary movement is pain-free. Now remember, the second most and the third most painful movement, that is pain-free now here. So that's fine. You can go ahead with the precaution. Slight pain on movement or overstretch, but response to therapy. So if you have if you get the pain in movement or overstretch, but that is response to therapy or any some of the activities that you have done in acute stage or some activities you have done in subacute stage, like isolation exercises, that therapy is helpful at this stage. So if you do that, the pain improves, right? So that is a yellow light, so, or a precautionary measure. No pain on basic functional activity. So stair climbing, walking, no pain. Fine. You can go ahead with the little more, but with the precaution. You can go ahead with you can go ahead further, but with the precaution. Green light is basically no pain during and after or next morning. Primary movement is 80 to 90% of the capacity. Pain-free contraction or a strong contraction. No pain in movement with overpressure or any direction, or no pain in any direction. Right? So this is the simple slide, but it gives you a lot for your self-evaluation. Now, next go to the participation level. At now it's a full participation level where you have pain either 0 or just 1 or just a simple discomfort. At this level, you focus more on speed, agility, and power. But again, you are not forgetting this base. Okay, the base is always there; it is constant. Over that, you're going to develop speed, agility, and power. So here, basically, we are going to have a lot of intensity-based compound exercises. Again, compound is when 2 or more joints are involved, and intensity now here it's going to be more repetitions. More weights, or you can have a all-out drills like 80, 85%, 90% of your effort, or 100% of your effort, right? So again, we started with overhead squats. We started with overhead barbell squat. You started with the stick. You started with the barbell. Now you're going to put weight here to give more challenge to the body, or you're going to have more response from the body. So start with this overhead squats. You can also involve some hex bar deadlift. This is also very important. So now you're preparing your muscle, your joints for the maximum forces. Now at this stage, you're gonna have more intense work for your muscle, more intense work for your joints, more intense work for your ligaments to strengthen enough so that you are able to participate in a track and field activity at your maximum intensity level. Okay, maximum. I'm not saying your optimum intensity level. Okay. You can also include the hang cleans, that is basically the power development, with the amazing technique. The technique should be the priority. The technique is very important, You can have a low step ups, little more speed work with the weights. Then single leg hamstring plyometrics. Now this is going to be a little more intense. So you're going to have a plyometrics like as you require while running. So some plyometric activity for the hamstring at mid-range. Then you can do it for the initial range. So we started with the double leg hamstring bridge, then single leg, then plyo. Okay, so that's how you progress. You can involve some vertical jumps here at this stage. This is very good activity before the run, or you can say in potentiation activities before the run, vertical jumps. You can also do some jumps with the weights. This is also very important. This is now you're preparing your joints to bear maximum forces. So you can start with just a barbell and then slowly you add on more weights in that. Now, how do you progress into sprinting? The sprinting is again ultimate performance that we require in sprinting. So you initially develop work capacity for anaerobic conditioning and endurance. You then develop the speed development, improve technique, and build repetitive sprint ability, and then achieve the maximum effort. Now, to get this protocol, this is the article that you can search on Google, like criteria-based return to sprinting progression following lower extremity injury. This is just published last year. This has the entire protocol given how you should progress to sprinting after an injury. Again, reevaluate after this activity. If you have a red light, definitely you have to stop that activity, step back again, and do the volume-based compound movements, and then again progress it to intensity-based. If you are yellow, definitely you reduce the weight and then slowly progress. You need to be a little more precautious. You have to follow a little more precautionary measures while doing that. And if it's a green light, definitely full participation. So here you are ready to participate your full capacity. You're ready to participate in your full capacity for the sprinting or your athletic performance. So once you are completed your entire injury management or entire injury process, the injury rehabilitation process or self-management is completed, then you need to make sure that the injury is not happening again. So again, prevention is always better than cure. It still stands true. Prevention is always better than cure. So what is the preventive measure that you need to follow? Always have workout diaries, as you have seen previously or in previous presentation, that how diary is very important. The training diary is very important. So you need to make sure that an entire workout routine is noted in the diary with the proper exercise and sports training, so that you progress it gradually. The gradual progression is always the key. Sudden spike always gives injury. There should be enough balance between strength and stability and mobility and flexibility. So again, remember, this is the base of the pyramid. So the base is strong, everything is strong, right? So the base is every time, it's very important, even for your athletic performance and even for your injury rehabilitation. Dynamic warm-up routine, as there has been presentation previously as well, how well a dynamic warm-up routine is important and how you should perform it, right? So it should have dynamic balance drills, mobility drills, stability exercise, and dynamic flexibility. Stretching routine, you should focus more on joint range of motion and muscle length. This is very important post training, so that you are not ending up in a tight joints or a tight muscle. The important is rest and recovery. Recovery is again very important. Rest is also very important. We have seen many times that if the athlete has a less duration or less hour of sleep, the next day the performance is reduced, and if you try to push more, there is always an injury. So again, and the other thing is the recovery. As you have a training protocol or a training schedule for a week, you should also plan for a recovery schedule or a recovery week. right? So where you need to put your recovery, that is very important. So you can say training recovery microcycle for a week or for 4-week block. That is very important, because when you recover well, the next bout of the exercise will always be better. So this is some of the HPC data that I follow here. So I do a lot of preventive measures as well, and recovery, recovery strategies that that I'm actively involved in. So you can see the difference between 2020 and 2021, same training block. So basically, this is the same training block. So last year we had only 7 athletes, and this time we have 13 athletes. So the preventive measure session, you can say it has gone from 15 to 78 this year. So the preventive session or a performance session, that is increased by 80% from last year to this year. Because of that, we have seen reduced number of injuries. So you can see the number of treatment session that is required, 16 last year, and this time it's only 6. So that's around 62.5% reduction in the total injury, right? So the preventive measures are very important. If you do proper warm-up, conditioning, your schedule is proper, your recovery strategies are proper, definitely there will not be any injury. So just to summarize, understand, this is a simple process. Identify, evaluate. Police protocol is very important for the acute stage. Subacute, you can start with the volume-based isolation exercises, then again volume-based compound exercises, intensity-based compound exercises, return to sprinting, and preventive measures. This is the simple process that you can understand and follow. It's very simple. Definitely you can involve more exercises, more expert. Your coach should be actively involved in your decision making and in your injury rehabilitation, injury management, and also preventive measure. Some take-home message that you need to understand: always respect the injury, take a step back and evaluate. Always just make sure that you follow the injury process. You feel great the next day, and then you do heavy on that day basically, and that you get injured again. And so you need to sometimes respect the injury. The injury is saying something to you that you have done over. So you need to take a step back. That's very important. Some injuries cannot heal overnight. Give some time. That's very important. It does not heal over time, right? It takes time. The body healing process takes time. Understand the body's response to training. Sometimes less is good. Sometimes we don't have, our days are not that great. Sometimes we are low. Sometimes, we are doing great. So some days we perform very well. Some days, same intensity, same volume, we don't perform very well. So don't try to push so hard at that days, because sometimes less is always good. If body is not recovered, communicate to the coach or high performance director for optimum solution. Remember, recovery is very important. So you can always communicate. I did not get sleep previous night, or my body is not recovered, or there is a heavy soreness. So you need to always communicate to your coach. Balance between training and recovery is very important, but accidents may occur. Remember the balance between training and recovery. As I said, as you have a training schedule, weekly schedule, you should also have a recovery schedule, like weekly schedule. That is very important, but accidents may occur. So if at all there is accidents that is happening in the gym or in the track, you should always follow the self-injury management process. Movement and strength is the key to recover faster and stronger. Movement and strength is very important. If you move well, if your strength is good, the recovery even after injury is going to be faster, and it's always going to be stronger, right? So that's it from my side. Thank you very much, everyone, for your attention. I hope you have taken something from here, and definitely we'll have some more sessions like this. Any questions?
All right. Thank you so much, Nilesh. That was a wonderful presentation from your end. And we have a lot of questions coming in from participants. This is also for all the participants who have any questions. I request you to type it in the Q&A box, as you see on the bottom of your screen. And we will try to go over as many questions as we can in the time. So Nilesh, the first question is from Ashish Rawat. Okay. He's asking us, what kind of ice is good for injury, and what are the benefits of it?
What kind of ISIS?
Yes,
Ice.
ice.
Okay.
Yes. Is
So
there a
ice
particular
simple.
type of?
I think the simple ice that we can also get it in fridge, right? So that ice is good, and we have seen the ice is always better in terms of reducing the soreness, reducing the inflammation, or reducing the pain. So ice is always definitely better. I mean, still people follow it all over the world. So it's definitely better. Other form of ice like nitrogen ice, and those are not those are not the best of ice. Definitely, I still follow the conventional method of icing. So the water based ice is always better. I hope that answers the question.
Sure. Thank you so much. The next question is from Priya Sanwal. She's asking us, what are the management tips for shin bone injury caused due to long runs?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Now this becomes very specific. Again, I said that you should always focus on the joint range of motion, then strength, then function, then return to activity. Always focus on the joint range of motion. Majority of the time, we have seen in long runs they don't have enough the dorsiflexion, basically the dorsiflexion of the foot. If they do not have enough dorsiflexion, definitely they tend to load more the front of the leg, and that's how it gets more inflamed, and then that becomes a shin split or a shin pain. So you should always focus more on the joint range of motion. That's,
All
yeah,
right.
that's the answer.
Thank you. Thank you for that. The next question is, uh, what is the difference, if any, in terms of injury and recovery when it comes to endurance and stamina? And how are they linked in terms of, again, injury and recovery?
Sorry, I didn't get you. Can you come again, please?
Sorry. So basically, what he's asking is there any difference in terms of preventing injury when it comes to endurance and stamina? So is our endurance and stamina the same when it comes to preventive measures of an injury?
Mhm.
And how do they influence the injury, if they do, or if they are different?
See, the preventive measure is always important. As I said, preventive measure reduces, as you can see, our stat basically it reduces almost 65% of the injuries. So the preventive measures are very important. Majority of the time, it happens that the endurance athletes, or the endurance athletes specifically, they do not follow the movement patterns, or they do not follow the dynamic warm-up routine properly. So that is very important. When you have a proper dynamic warm-up routine, that's definitely going to prevent your injury. And even if you get injured, you still have that movement registered in your brain. That's going to help you recover faster. That's the answer.
Thank you so much for that, Nilesh. The next question is from Muhammad Akram. He's asking us, he has a stress fracture in his posterior tibial since the last 2 months.
Okay.
What is the best steps now for him in terms of recovery and rehab?
Okay, so see, fracture is something very different. It's now the breakage of the bone, or a periosteal break, you can say. That's the technical term, but definitely at this point of time, what I would say is you should always respect the injury. So sometimes you need to offload that area for quite some times. Normally, we have seen for lower limb injuries, especially for the stress fracture, we offload for 4 to 6 weeks. That's very important for a younger athletes. So once that is completely healed, then again you follow the principle from subacute management in this presentation. You start with isolation exercises, then compound movements, then intensity-based compound exercises. That's how we progress.
Thank you so much. Nilesh, the next question, I think, is a very interesting one.
Yeah.
So the gentleman here is asking us that how important is the mental aspect in terms of injury and recovery? So how much of an importance does a positive mindset play in terms of recovery?
Yeah, it's amazing question actually. My colleague Maithili has already done presentation on that, and I think it's one of the most important factor, you can say, in our team of injury management. The team basically consists of coach, physio, SNC staff, and sports psychologist. So sports, the mental health conditioning is very important, very, very important in the injury management process for their return to activity, because most of the time we have seen after an injury, the athlete is always scared of getting re-injured, getting re-injured, or they may get re-injured or something after doing particular activity. So at this point of time, you need to have a sports psychologist for the fear avoid, that the fear should not be there. You are completely recovered, and that positive reinforcement should go through the sports psychologist. That's very important question, and that's amazing question.
Thank you so much again, Nilesh, for that. The second one is, what are the main underlying reasons for hamstring injury to occur, and what are the remedies if it happens?
So yeah, that's also quite interesting question actually. For why it happens, there is no clear clear statement that I can provide right now. It can happen because of deconditioning. It can happen because it's not it's tired, or it may happen because it's too tight, or it is not at optimum function level. So it may happen anytime, and if at all it happens, this is how you follow. Basically, this is a simple process. That's evaluate. Again, you need to follow the simple process of management, self management protocol. That's how you manage the hamstring injury. In sprinting, I would say majority of the time we have seen when you are having a ground contact. So when you're doing the sprinting, or the sprinting, the ground contact, that's the time where you have a very forceful contraction of the hamstring. That's the time the hamstring gets injured. So I hope that answers the question, because yeah.
Sure. Nilesh, so next question, it's regarding the usage of oil in terms of oil massage in recovery. Does it help in pain prevention? Does it help in catalyzing the recovery? Is it helpful if it is? I mean, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. See, I believe that all strategies of recovery is important. I also include some foam rolling, like oil massages by sports massage therapists. That is very important. The reason is, sometimes there are some tightness or stiffness that can help, and it also gives some sort of relaxation to the full body. In that gives good sleep also after a massage. I prefer after oil massage, the person should go for an ice bath. That gives ultimate result, and I have seen that in my practice. So I think yes, definitely it helps. It helps a lot for the recovery.
Thank you, Nilesh. The next question is from this gentleman. He's asking us, once scar tissue develops and your muscles around it or your ligaments heal around it, and he obviously feels a little weak in his ankle,
Yeah.
what should be the next course of action now that he didn't have the medical facilities to get it checked upon, and now that he has diagnosed it, what are the next steps?
Well, that's the interesting question, and also it's the answer is very lengthy, because the rehabilitation process is going to be different from now on, because you have already developed a scar. So when you go into the scar, what do you say, like a scar remodeling, or tissue remodeling phase, that remodeling phase is a different management line altogether. It's not the same as what we do it from acute to return to participation. So definitely it's completely different, but he needs to follow proper, I think, medical advice, and also I would suggest he should follow a sports physiotherapist who is near, or we can consult online to someone. Definitely that there will be some good rehab process or protocol that is going to help him, definitely. But as of now, at this point of stage, it's going to be very difficult to give that answer, because it's very lengthy answer.
Thank you, Nilesh. The next question, and we will take one more question after this. So the second last question here. So this gentleman is asking us, what are the preventive exercises for groin injury, and how should what are if any, exercises you can recommend for the recovery and rehabilitation of groin injury?
Well, that's a good question. Like I would say, groin injuries for preventive measure, you need to make sure that your groin is not stiff enough. Definitely, that's a first point that you need to note. For groin injury prevention, you can definitely use one of the strategies that I have put in my presentation, like groin openers and the distraction with the band. Definitely, that is going to help. Overall, for the groin injury, the adductor muscle should be strong, your hamstring muscle should be strong, your overall core should have good strength. That's going to prevent the injury definitely, and also going to help you in better return to play, or coming back from an injury faster and stronger. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Nilesh. And the next question, I think this pertains to a lot of athletes and young coaches
Yeah.
out there. So a lot of athletes face injuries, and obviously they don't have the resources like everyone might think that is ideal, that you go to a physiotherapist or you go to the orthopedic. So in
Sure.
case, because of this lack of, or rather a difficult financial situation, how, if an athlete undergoes injury, what do you recommend? I mean, obviously I don't think there is one right answer, but the question pertains to, is there some self diagnosis, is there some resource that they can read upon, and is there any trusted resource they can trust? Because you have a lot of um, information on the internet which may or may not be true, or which may not even be accurate. So how do you basically guide such people?
Well, that's a tough question actually. Uh, so let me put it this way. So if they do not have any resources, or any financial stability to go for a consult or rehab process, first is they can follow this protocol, self injury management protocol that we have already presented. The other thing, you can always trust the registered website, in the sense that those who have very well established name in the in the medical or a physiotherapy field, or a sports physiotherapy field. I recommend, there are many resources available online. Definitely, it's not true, especially YouTube, videos which they show that a lot of exercises are helpful, but actually they are not, and they do it in a wrong form and technique, and they get injured. We have seen many athletes like that, and yeah, so you should follow a trusted website. Basically, the trusted website, you can get it via world famous clinics, world famous sports and exercise medicine centers. There you have a lot of information about how you can rehabilitate yourself after an injury. So yeah, so that's important. So if you have injuries, if you are able to if you follow this presentation, definitely you should be able to manage. I'm not saying 100%, but definitely you should be able to manage your injury. But if not, there are trusted website and trusted international and national as well, international and national website, which is sports and exercise science information that is given on that, so you can follow that definitely.
Thanks, Nilesh. I think this being, I feel this is one of the most important questions also, because there's a lot of wrong information, like you highlighted, on
Yes.
YouTube, which could negatively affect rather than help also sometimes. So I think that very well covers the question. And again, now we reach the conclusion of the session. Thanks a lot again, Nilesh, for this wonderful presentation. And apologies to all the participants, as in the interest of time, we couldn't answer all your questions. But we will be addressing all of them in our next Q&A sessions, which is on Friday, Friday 4 p.m., where we will be giving all of you a chance to speak directly to our experts who hosted the previous 4 sessions. So Nilesh sir will also be present there. Thank you again, Nilesh, for hosting such a wonderful and informative session. I'm sure all of us have gained some valuable knowledge from it. Now, I'd like to hand it back to you if you have some parting words for our attendees.
Yeah, absolutely. So for all the athletes and coaches, the most important injury rehabilitation or injury rehabilitation process is a communication. If you don't communicate with your with your coach or sports performance director or medical team or a medical advisor, it's going to be very difficult to manage injury at an early level. So most of the time it happens that the athlete comes at a later stage where the injury has gone worse. Always remember if the injury is fresh, the treatment becomes easier and it becomes faster compared to later on after certain months, after certain days. So always communicate if you feel there is some issue going on with you. That's a closing line from my side. And thank you everyone for your wonderful participation over the period of last 3-4 weeks. I really appreciate Reliance Foundation Youth Sports for giving this opportunity for me to present on this self-management. Definitely, it's one of the best presentation. Not I would say the best presentation, but definitely it's one of the best topic that is given to me to present for all of you. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Thank you, Nilesh, again. And a big thank you to all the participants for attending today's session. We hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you back with us next Wednesday, which is the 25th of August at 4 p.m. for our next webinar and our final one, Q&A session with the experts, as we will be joined by Nilesh Makwana, James Hillier, and Metli Bhuptani to answer all your athletics-related queries which were pertaining to the previous 4 topics. As stated before, we will be commencing the Elite webinar series in the last week of October. The attendees who attended all the sessions will be given first preference, and we will communicate the invitation through the email. In case you wish to participate, you can write an email to us at info@rfyouthsports.com, and we will try to accommodate you in case there are any empty slots. Before you leave the session, we request you to kindly fill out the feedback form that you'll be able to see after the end of the session. On behalf of the entire RFI's family, thank you once again. We hope you all have a great weekend ahead. Come on, India, let's play. Thank you, everyone, and a very goodbye.